Now, ever since the 2018 draft, when a mega superstar was passed over by 3 different franchises, the Phoenix Suns, Sacramento Kings, and to somewhat degree, the Atlanta Hawks. Even though they did draft Luka, the general manager at the time, who formerly worked for Golden State, was trying to build a similar team and thought Trae Young was a better fit. So he sent Luka's draft rights to Dallas for Trae Young. But all these things came back to haunt these franchises so bad that they let go of all 3 of those GMs in a short time span, as Luka within his first 2 years was already an MVP candidate. But not only what I like to call the Luka effect had an impact on franchises, but it also had an impact on players. And I know sometimes we kind of forget about Marvin Bagley, but in this circumstance, I'm going to focus on Deandre Ayton. Because just being a first overall pick is already a tough jacket to wear as expectation levels are through the roof. But he has not quite lived up to being that first overall pick. And when you add on top of that, he's not living past the expectations of a guy who was drafted above Luka. And somewhat subconsciously throughout the league, players, personnel, franchises, they'll always look at him like that. Now, these are definitely interesting times for Ayton, as he did miss a January 17th game versus the Brooklyn Nets due to the fact that, it's funny to say, quote unquote, he was trapped in his house due to icy conditions on the road, even though other teammates didn't go through similar circumstances. And the game still took place at the arena where staff had to show up, cooks, ushers, security, thousands of employees had to show up, trainers, but yet no one else had an issue but Ayton. But ironically enough, an article comes out on February 9th where Blazers beat writer had emphasized that in Ayton's early days in Portland, he had issues of tardiness and tantrums. And you already know how that goes according to team sources. That's what they always say. But Deandre Ayton got to understand the APB is out on him. And that organization is letting him know subtly that they're not going to tolerate his bullshit. Because if you look at his history back in Phoenix in that first season when they had no expectations, he was way too passive, not even getting up a lot of shots, not even performing like a first overall pick. And in the second year, he only played 35 games after having that PED incident. And in his third season, when Chris Paul came to the Suns, he actually didn't benefit at all, which is very rare for centers, especially playing with the point guard. If he could make DeAndre Jordan an all-star, Deandre Ayton should have definitely been on his way up there. But all the bad habits and characteristics he had in Phoenix just kind of plagued him. Him being known as a lazy defender and just being that guy that's a little bit too finesse, especially in the paint. Things got so bad before he left Phoenix, he pretty much was reduced to a role player, a guy to set screens, which he wasn't even good at that. And all he had to do was pretty much rebound by the time KD got there. So as I said before, being a first overall pick is already a tough jacket to wear, but just being known as that guy selected above Luka, who's performing at an MVP level from season to season, it makes it even harder. And the intel that was dropped on him by that Blazers beat writer also compared him to Hassan Whiteside when he arrived in Portland, which is a bad comparison. Quote unquote, there's an eerie resemblance to Hassan Whiteside. So Deandre Ayton better watch his back over there in Portland, because the timing is so ironic. Him being stuck in his house, we didn't hear anything as far as him getting punished for missing that game, and no other player or just personnel was reported in the same type of conditions of just not being able to make it to the game because of icy roads. And then about 2 weeks later, you're hearing that he's being compared to Hassan Whiteside. And when he first got to Portland, the team had to deal with tantrums and tardiness. So in the curious case of Deandre Ayton, he definitely got a peep game, because his output on the court will always be in comparison to what Luka's doing. Not just being a first round pick, but to what Luka's doing. So when he has all these lackluster performances, and when you add on top of that laziness, the disdain is going to be times 10. And the Blazers at this very moment is pretty much a team that's tanking and just rebuilding and developing young players. So he does have that cushion to make mistakes, but the optics of him just missing that game due to icy conditions, I've never seen an excuse like that. We got NBA teams out in Minnesota, Chicago, Milwaukee, New York, Boston, Philly. All these regions deal with snow. In Portland, out there in the Northwest, They deal with cold conditions. I've never heard this excuse before to not make an NBA game. But Ayton, so far in the first few years of his career, he has a lot of things going against him as far as his reputation.